Abraham had faced tests. And now we find Abraham is finally back on track. He's finally back on plan A. In fact, Isaac, Mr. Plan A, is growing up to be healthy and strong. And I wonder sometimes if Abraham didn't say, oh, I finally got it. My life is finally on track. I'm finally doing what God wants me to do. And then, pop. In verse 1, you can read that word, and I hope you don't go over it too fast. Sometime later, God, what? Tested Abraham. Sometimes, God gives us tests that we don't understand. God gives them, and we take them. But from our perspective, from our view, they seem to make no sense whatsoever. I wonder if anybody has been there. Abraham got stabbed in the heart because maybe the most precious, promised, provincial person in the world was about to be taken away from him. Now, I'm going to go really deep for about 2 seconds here. Why would God take away the object of someone's faith? Why would God take that away? Think about that for just a little bit. Abraham had sacrificed a lot already, but nothing like this. Nothing to this level had Abraham sacrificed. His life was revolving around sacrifices, sacrificing animals. Wherever Abraham went, he built an altar, and he sacrificed the best of his flock. But now God is saying, I want another sacrifice. I want something that's even more precious. It could be said that love is shown by what we are willing to give up for that love. It reminds me of the story of the gift of the Magi. Do you remember that old story by O. Henry? Christmas time, and the couple is poor, and so the man says, the only thing I have of any worth is this silver pocket watch which my father gave me, the most precious thing in my life, most precious possession I have, but I'm going to sell it so I can get combs for my wife's beautiful hair. At the same time, the wife is saying, you know, the only thing I have of any worth is so precious is my beautiful hair. But I know my husband has that wonderful pocket watch of his father. I think I'm going to cut my hair and I'm going to sell it so I can buy him a chain for his pocket watch. Do you remember that story? In the end, they gave up the things that were most precious to them so that they could give a gift to the one that they truly loved. And in the end, what did they truly do? They gave sacrificial love to the one that they said they loved. Do you love God this morning? What would you give up to show your love for God? This is pure foreshadowing to Jesus. Guess what city grew up on Mount Moriah? Jerusalem. Guess whose one and only beloved Son did die on Mount Moriah? I'd like you to ponder these questions as we roll along in the text. What would you give up or sacrifice for God? But then at the very same time, I would like you to deeply consider, what did God give up for you? We're going to move on in our text. Verses 6 through 10. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. And he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, Father, yes, my son, Abraham replied. The fire and the wood are here, Isaac said, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the two of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. He reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. Film blank number 2. Abraham's on the razor's edge. Abraham is on the razor's edge. Can you imagine how long that walk was? Can you imagine how long the walk up the mountain was for Abraham and Isaac? Please note in verse 6, the wood was placed on Isaac. I'd like you to flip over. Remember who else got wood placed on him? Jesus Christ carried his own cross. The wood was placed on him as he went to a place of sacrifice. But then the questions came, and this is deep. This is where we get on the razor's edge, and maybe you'll know what I mean. In the midst of your journey, in the midst of your testing, have you ever been asked questions? You're struggling, you're confused, you're trying to do what God wants you to do, but then someone will ask you, why are you a Christian? Why do you get up on Sunday mornings? Why do you give? Why don't you cuss? Why don't you tell dirty jokes? Why don't you go out and get drunk? Maybe there are times you even ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to make it with God? Now, I don't like to think about the knife and the fire. You'll notice Isaac said, Dad, we got the wood and we got the fire. Isaac didn't even talk about the knife. I don't even like to talk about the knife. The gut-wrenching emotion, the confusion and the sadness Abraham must have experienced. But check out his answer in verse 8. Just look at that. Look at that verse. Abraham answered, God himself will provide a lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the two of them went on together. Christian, when someone asks you, why do you sacrifice your time and your treasure and your talent? Why don't you just give up this faith stuff? Christian, maybe there are times that you even ask that question. Why don't I just give up this faith stuff? I would like for you to answer like Abraham did. Only don't answer like Abraham did. Don't put it in the future tense. God will provide a lamb. God will provide a lamb. God did provide a lamb. That's why we do what we do. That's why we are who we are. Because God provided a lamb for you and for me. It's not really about what I'm called to give up. It's what God already gave up for me and for you. But now I'm getting way ahead of myself. We got to finish up with verses 11 through 14. Verse 11 through 14. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, he replied. Do not lay a hand on the boy, he said. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Abraham looked up, and there was a thicket. He saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the place, the Lord will provide. And to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. Fill in blank number 3. Finishing out our knife and blade imagery, God comes in the nick of time.